Imagine being lucky enough to go to a writer's retreat in a beautiful location with gourmet food. Heaven. But then, what if a crime lord calls you and tells you you have to kill someone or they're going to kill your daughter? Today, we chat with Laurie Buchanan about Illusionist from the Sean McPherson series. Welcome to Blackbird Writers Presents Author Interviews. I'm Sharon Lynn, and welcome to you, Laurie.
Thank you. It's so fun to be here. Thank you.
I'm so glad you could make it. Loved this book, loved all of them. I mean,
Thank you.
just just gonna throw that out there right now. Um, but yeah, this one had a couple of surprise moments that just made me cheer. So um, just wonderful. But I do want to kind of start with that premise that I just mentioned, because that is how the book starts with this just evil, despicable Gambino, your villain. He is so evil. I just wanted to know, do you enjoy writing these characters that we love to hate?
I do. Writing the bad guy or the bad gal, there's both. Um, when you can write to evoke emotion that strong in a reader, you're on the right track. And it's so fun to try to accomplish that. I know as a reader, I'm a just I read all the time. And when I can have a storyline that makes me love or hate, and it's more fun to hate somebody, I love that because you're so invested. You're so invested. And the more you hate that villain, it's probably because the more dire the situation is, there's more to lose. So if you can pull that off as a writer, it's a feel good, and it's not necessarily easy, but it's fun to try to accomplish. Yes, I love writing villains.
That's wonderful. So the book is called Illusionist in your books that start with I that have four syllables titles,
Yes.
which we talked about last time, which I love. Um, the character Jennifer actually is an illusionist, and Libby, one of our hosts at Pines and Quill, says magician, and Jennifer's like, "Mm, I used to be offended by that, but it's okay." So, can you please just go into a little more detail about the
Yeah.
difference between an illusionist and a magician?
And while their goal is to make the audience happy, both of them, they are different. So a magician is usually a person, male or female, who is working with a much smaller, much closer audience, and they're using like sleight of hand, card tricks, cups and balls, coins, that type of thing. And it's small, usually. An illusionist is this is a big stage. A magician typically doesn't have somebody helping them. There's not an assistant. On the other hand, somebody who's on a grand stage creating a massive illusion typically has at least one assistant, usually one assistant, maybe sometimes more, depending on how big is this illusion. It is the illusionist um, is trying to change your perception. They want you to think or not think something. They're guiding your perception, and the magician just wants to just trick you. It's just it's enjoyment. It's just like yay, that kind of a thing. Whereas an illusionist is a much grander type thing.
Yeah, there's one scene that I loved where she just walks into a room and morphs her shadow into Alfred Hitchcock, who was one of my heroes, and I'm just like, I mean, everybody in the room was gasping. I was gasping. I'm like, I want to see that now, please.
Oh.
So, when you were researching this, did you learn any tricks that I know you can't reveal if you did learn them, or did you practice any sleight of hand?
So as a child, one of the things I wanted to be was a magician. And I grew up in the Southern California, San Diego area, and my dad was a pilot. So we would often fly as a family in our little four-seater over to Las Vegas, which is short from San Diego to Las Vegas, and a little flight is short. And as a family, I don't know how many times we got to see David Copperfield. Now that's an illusionist,
Yeah,
and it was
grants.
massive. I mean, he made things appear and disappear that you couldn't even, and we usually had pretty close seats. And I was just, that started the whole thing in my mind. So when I said I wanted to be a magician, I wasn't kidding. And my parents, then for all of my, whether it's a birthday or Christmas or whatever, you needed to give your child a gift, I would get either an individual, sort of a ratcheted up uh, magic trick, or I would get a box, a kit. And so I had that in my repertoire. Nothing fancy, definitely beginner. But then as an adult, my husband and I went to Las Vegas and we got to see Sean Teller and Penn.
Oh.
And Penn and Teller, they're excellent. And that again was like, oh my gosh, why am I a writer? I should be a magician or an illusionist. And so I didn't learn anything spectacular, but to write the things that I wrote, I probably spent at least 20 hours, not all in one row, watching YouTube videos of famous magicians, both male and female, and illusionists, both. I watched magicians and illusionists. Um, and it was it's fascinating. If anybody who's watching this is ever needs something to watch, go just out to YouTube and look up a magician or an illusionist. It's absolutely fascinating what they can do.
That's amazing. Yeah, and that's fun research. I love that. So, just to kind of change gears a little, when the series first started, Emma was in a wheelchair, and there is a recurring character who is also blind. And you usually have one of the guests have some sort of disability. So,
Yes.
um, I'm just wondering if this is a particular passion for you, or you just want to bring to light that everybody's a person.
Yes, both. And in my own family, there are several disabilities. And so it's really important for me to broaden the spectrum of who can and can't be heroes and heroines. Everybody can. We are all abled in some way, no matter who, what, when, where, why, and how. We all have amazing abilities, and I just want to make that bigger and broader and more visible. Um, sometimes people aren't seen. So you don't yet have silver hair. I do. And I'm noticing I started getting silver hair, gray hair first, and then it went silver in my early 20s, my mid 20s, I started turning silver. And and as I'm now much more than 25, it's interesting how less visible I am. So people who I have a disability in that I have silver hair, and then there's more profound things, and sometimes people become invisible, and I want to broaden that spectrum and have people, male, female, adults, children, whatever the situation is. I think that broadening our horizons and making everyone visible and all people able to on whatever scale there might be. I think that's really vital for us as as humanity.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. It is always wonderful. And I love the character who is blind and she has a seeing eye.
Ivy and Maggie. Sister Margaret
Ivy and
Mary
Maggie.
McCracken. Sister Margaret Mary McCracken, who is known as Maggie, and Ivy. Yeah, I love my grandfather was blind. And so she is so fun to write, because typically when you're writing a scene, as you well know, you're talking about things that the character sees through their eyes, mixed
Yeah.
sees this and that and the other thing. But you have to be able to write a scene from the perspective of you're not using things that you see, and that's a little bit more interesting. It ratchets up your your skills a little bit when you have to write a scene without describing what you see because you're not seeing it. So that's kind of fun. I love Ivy.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really fun too with the magic because she's like what's happening. And
Yeah, what's
everybody
happening?
else's
Tell me.
like little different perceptions of what was happening. Just
Yes, yes.
masterfully done. Um, so the area around Pines and Quills is real, but um, a lot of the specific locations, like Pines and Quills, is specific to your series. Devil's Canyon comes up a lot because it's just a great place to have something really scary happening because it's really steep and has a lot of rocks and the ocean and all that.
Right, right.
So is that a real location or
I wish it were. No, so El Canyon del Diablo, the Devil's Canyon, which is on the south end of Pines and Quill, below Thoreau Cottage at that part of the property, it is not real, but it's based on two geographic locations in my growing up years, again from Southern California. So Del Diaz uh, is a location, a real location, and Eagles Peak is a real location. And my sister and I, growing up when we could play outside, without parental supervision,
right?
and we did. And there was quicksand in Del Diaz. And my parents just said, if you
Don't go
go
there.
if you go into Lake Hodges, you're dead. So just, use your judgment and do what you love. There were rattlesnakes everywhere. There was a wild horse named Trixie that we would catch and ride. I mean, we did crazy things there. And then Eagles Peak, you'll remember from some of the books, it really did have caves with bats in it. And my dad would take us up there and we'd wear hats so that, they say that bats get in your hair, which is
Yeah,
not true.
it's in my hair.
But anyway, so a combination of those two childhood locations is El Canyon del Diablo, the Devil's Canyon, that is a total figment of my imagination.
But it's such a great setting. Just always scary. It's like, don't go near there. Just
Yeah,
listen to
don't
things.
go there.
Just
Don't go
don't go
there.
near there. So we are on the ocean, and there are scenes on water and speedboat and great description of the speedboat. As you know, I have a boat in San Diego. So have you ever been out in one of these like speedboats that can go 40 knots?
Never one quite like the one in the book that had those outboard engines that were 1,500 horsepower horsepower up each, inboard, outboard, and what those engines ultimately did, which I won't say. That was so fun to write. I've been on speedboats, but nothing that makes you want to get right with God right now. Not like these boats. And that was really fun to write. And a lot of research was involved with the terminology to get that right. And even on the dock, you have these cleats that you tie up to. And I had to learn, starboard, port and starboard. And the only way I remember them is port has 4 letters, which is left. Starboard has a lot more, which is the word right. And that's how I can remember port and starboard.
That's how I
So
remember too.
so that was fun to research. And then having had some experience on a speedboat, not to that caliber, but then you can just ratchet that experience up and use it, and then use your imagination in the most wicked way with those outboard motors. Then yeah, that was great fun to think up and write.
Just beautifully done. So Emma is pregnant. She's been pregnant for a couple of books now. And Emma being pregnant makes me scared all the time. Whenever she's in a scene, I'm like, even if they're having dinner, I'm like, something's going to happen to Emma. So I'm just tell us about that, having her in this state, how that has an effect on how you write the scenes around her.
Yes, and just in case whoever is listening is not understanding why, how could she be pregnant for several books? Each book is a month. It represents a month. So I've got a little bit of time to work with the pregnancy. So She hasn't been pregnant for years by any stretch of the imagination. Um,
Sorry.
and so having somebody who is vulnerable, because when you're pregnant, you're more vulnerable because something could go wrong with either the baby or the mother. So that then is a great way to, anytime there's a vulnerability, you can use that vulnerability to um, play on the reader's feelings. And we talked about feelings at the beginning, to love somebody or to hate somebody or to worry about them and to be scared. So there's a reason that when you and I write blurbs for other writers' books, we might say it's a white knuckle, it's an edge of your seat, it's a spine tingling, because people want that to happen to them. People buy your books and my books to be scared, to be on edge, to wonder, and to have somebody who's having a baby is wonderment. Then we add a little bit to that because she's married, and not only is she cautious and has to be careful, then he's worried about her. And when he's worried, we worry. And so that is a great tool. It's a very reality, it's authentic, and they're at the right age bracket for this. So I wanted to use something that I can once again, as a magician or an illusionist, manipulate the reader's feelings.
Yeah, yeah, and it really does just yeah. So what month? This was October, right? This book, Illusionist, was
You know,
October.
I'm 3 books ahead now, so
Oh, yeah.
I think this is October because she's the baby is born in April, and that was the last book I wrote. I'm one ahead now, so the baby's a month old where I'm currently writing. So I think it's fall. So yes, yes, and and um and then eventually, trust me, the baby does get born.
Good.
She arrives on the scene.
Well, I remember you had said at one point that one of your editors said if you ever do anything to Hemingway, who is the
The dog.
big beautiful
Yes.
dog, that she would come and find you and kill you.
Yes.
And good to know the baby is born and can't help me
Yes. Yes. Nothing
because
happens to the baby, but there
yeah,
are close
like
calls.
dogs and babies,
Yes.
you gotta be
Dogs and
okay.
babies. Yes. Dogs and babies, but that doesn't rule out adults.
Right. They drop like flies. Um, so you just mentioned you are four ahead of where we are, so that would be book 12?
So we're talking about illusionists today. So
Right.
the next book, let me look here. The next book is Innocuous, which is book 6. And for readers who might not be familiar with my work, the title we mentioned at the beginning is a 4-syllable I word always. And whatever that title word means, the entire book is written around that. And I try to only use that word one time. The exception was illusionist. I had to use that word in a couple of ways within the book, but usually I use the title word one time, and the entire book is written to that. So innocuous, which means appears harmless, is the next book, and it's already out. Not out, it's out to beta readers and sensitivity readers, as is book 7, which is insidious, and that means a treacherous in a gradual, subtle way. And the entire book is written around treachery in a gradual, subtle way. So book 6 and 7, innocuous and insidious, are currently with beta readers. Then they go to sensitivity readers, and the sensitivity readers are for the purpose of the disabilities that I use. And so I give them to people who can speak to, you didn't do this correctly, you nailed this, have you thought about adding maybe this, that type of a thing. And then now I'm currently writing incognito, which means to conceal one's true identity. And this one is really fun because it takes place in an assisted living facility. And I have a friend who I have written every single day. We write back and forth for 10 years, who lives in an assisted living facility. She's on the other side of the country, and she has told me some hair-raising stories. And that took hold in my little pointed head, and I ratcheted up the heat, and I am working with that in incognito. And And then I did my research about what, real criminal things that really happen and there's a difference between nursing homes and assisted living and what can happen in either of these, but more in one type than the other. And I'm leveraging those real situations that really happen every day across the continental United States, and they're in a crime thriller.
All right.
So that's what I'm working on now.
Yeah, that is amazing that you're actually, so far
Ahead, yes.
ahead. Yeah, and how you keep everything straight talking about them.
It's notebooks, and in front of me you can't see. I've got things taped up here. It's
Like a crime scene or a crime, figuring out the
yeah,
crime.
almost practically. I need to know where I'm. You write the Cotswold crime mysteries, and you have to know who's this tall, what color eyes, what street did they come from, where are they going, and what are they allergic to, what do they like to eat? Because if you have somebody who's allergic to brownies, and then in the next book they're eating them, unless it's meant to kill them, you have to keep track too. And because the first thing that'll happen is the reader will say, I thought that Mick's eyes were green. Why are they blue? That
Right.
kind of
Right.
thing.
Well, it takes us, at least it takes me a year to write
Yes.
the book. And then I know as a reader, because I read yours in a day and a half. It's like things that I wrote, and by the time it's out, it's been a year and a half.
Oh,
The things I
absolutely.
wrote almost, a year and a half ago, people are like, but this and this. And I'm like,
So to give you an example, so this book, this is the arc of it because it's got the circle on it. This is final edits just went in and it goes to print this coming week. So when all of you folks, you're one of the you've got an advanced reader copy. Someone said to me on 2 pages, she said, Laurie, you've got now this has gone through professional editors, proofreaders,
yeah.
line editing. She said, you've got a real problem here, unless I'm blind. And whatever the page it was, she said, you have Maggie here, but Maggie's not here. You're talking about
Yeah.
Maggie, and she's not here. And I'm like, which affected more than that page. So I'm like, holy cow. So what I had to
Yeah,
do
like,
was
yeah. Mick
I,
leans down and gives Maggie a treat. I'm like, when did
yes,
Maggie get there?
exactly. Was it you that told me the problem?
It
It was.
wasn't.
Yeah. So what I had to do was I'm like, oh, criminy. So I had to extract that because at this point you can't change the format of the pages. It can't be longer or shorter. It's locked and loaded.
Right.
So I had to lift that and write something that would replace that. And then the next part in that same chapter where Maggie is again something referring to Maggie, lift that and write with that same word count, that same everything, get it back then, call the people, the publisher and say, on these 2 pages, because they get a list from me, I need a comma, not a period, I need a this, not a that. But this was big, big. And I had to explain, it's not a word we're changing. It's not a piece of punctuation. I can't believe I did this, but I did this. And that was, 3 books ago. And when now it's you told me, I'm like, no way. And I go back and I'm like, yes way. Oh my gosh. And even my sister who reads she didn't you caught it. And that was a big deal. That was a big deal. And then my sister caught something at the end, near the end when I said Emma blah 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 said, and it was Libby blah 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 said. So
I did see that.
I don't think readers know what happens. And to have it gone over again, I pay outside of the publishing world professional line editors, copy editors to look at this and oh.
Yeah, yeah, it is always a challenge. I think there's a meme out there. It's like, been through 7 million editing processes, release day one, and you see the error on
Oh
page
yeah.
one.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh.
Well, when is Illusionist officially released to the public at large?
April 15th, it'll be on shelves and it goes this next week also to be narrated. It'll be in paperback, ebook format, and audiobook format. In the past, I've never gotten something quite this early to the production and narrator. So I think it's going to come, the audiobook will come out at the same time. And Rebecca Stern, she is the narrator. She's really, really, really good. So whether you're the people who are listening are paperback, you want a physical copy, or your ebook or your audiobook, it's going to be available in all three of those formats, and it happens on April 15th. And at the launch, my local bookstore here, Rediscovered Books in Boise, Idaho, they're doing a virtual launch, and the person, most of us, when we do that, we're in conversation with somebody being interviewed. And I'm doing it a little different. I'm having Rebecca Stern, the narrator. We're going to interview each other for this
Oh,
one.
that's
So that ought to
awesome.
be fun. And that'll all be out on my website and on my anywhere you follow me on social media. And people can get to anything through my website, which is lauriebuchanan.com. Just my name.com.
There we go. All right. That the launch sounds like it's going to be so much fun.
I think so.
Thank you for joining us, Lori, and thank you, everybody who is watching, for joining us at Blackbird Writers Presents Author Interviews.
Thank you for having me. This was a great conversation.
Thank you.